Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you today. Happy new moon, guys. It's a new moon in Taurus today, and I'm going to start my talk in relation to the new moon, and I just want to then follow through on the rest of the energies, I guess, for the rest of this month and projecting a little bit further ahead. Simply because there's some, really powerful interchanges taking place with the planets, and there has been, and there is, and there will be, as pretty much is always the case anyway. But I guess it's about trying to understand, I suppose, where does that fit into our own life, and how do we work with that energy? And naturally, the statements that I'm going to make. Well, they're general to a degree, and then they can be more specific when you start applying certain things to your own chart. So, for example, where is this new moon in your birth chart? So the new moon is today, which is the 15th of May. This recording is taking place on the 15th of May 2018, and the new moon is at 24 degrees of Taurus. I will share my screen shortly just to show the chart for that. So I'll talk about that when I get to that. But I guess to start off with, there's a few things going on. We've had, just get my dates. So we had Chiron, transition into Aries on the 18th of May. On the 18th of April, which was, almost a month ago now. And we have Pluto in retrograde motion since the 23rd of April of 2018. We've had Saturn going to retrograde since the 18th of April. And just going back a step, Pluto does not go direct until October the 1st of 2018, and Saturn doesn't go direct until the 6th of September 2018. Jupiter is also retrograde. That started 9th of March and doesn't go direct until the 11th of July. Is around about the time where we have that solar eclipse. And Neptune will go retrograde in the month of June this year as well. So there's quite a few changes going on. And the main ones I want to focus on today is just this beginning point of the new moon in Taurus. It's a beautiful new moon. It has because it's in Taurus at a fairly late degree, which I'll show you in a minute in the chart. As I said, it's 24 degrees. We have Pluto and Mars and Lilith, the goddess Lilith, the black moon Lilith, all lined up together. So Pluto, Mars and Lilith are all in late degrees of Capricorn, which you'll see in a moment. And those three are actually forming a trine aspect to this new moon, which is good in the sense where, well, good or bad, as I frequently say, I don't like to use those words, I find them very limiting. But let's just say that having a trine from Pluto, Mars and Lilith to this new moon is a lot more fortunate. If those planets were squaring this new moon, that would be bringing up a lot of tension, provoking energies and experiences. But the trine is suggesting that there's a beautiful, supportive, flowing element to this new moon coming directly from Mars, Pluto, and Lilith. Now, anything to do with Mars, Pluto, and Lilith, and the fact that we've got the three of them together at very close degrees, it's pretty interesting. Now, those three planets are all to do with power in different forms, and they also all can relate to the abuse of power as well. So they're very, very strong dynamic energies, and they are in the sign Capricorn, and Capricorn can be quite a hard sign as well, although it can have a real sensual side to it because it is a central sign, but I'm not talking about the central component of Capricorn. I guess I'm referring more to the way Capricorn, I suppose, approaches things, you know, which is in a very structured, earthy kind of way when it comes to business and the material world and creating. It's a cardinal sign, so it is about creating things, right? Motivated to do so. So the fact that we have Mars, Lilith, and Pluto, as I said, all making a beautiful trine to this new moon in Taurus, I feel that that energy is going to be really rewarding for us in the sense where, you know, this new moon starts today, but, you know, it's not as though the energy is just for today, because this is a new moon is always the birth. It's planting a seed for what you want to see flower and evolve and develop, you know, over the next 2 weeks, you could say, and the moon then becomes full. And we can even take that further and say we can really look at, you know, what we're doing right now as a general kind of layer of what's going to be happening over the next month for us. And you really do need to look at where this new moon lands in your birth chart, because whatever area it lands in, whatever house it lands in, that's going to show you which area of your life that you're actually planting this seed, this beautiful Taurus earth, grounding, strong, stubborn, you can say, energy. It's you know, Taurus is the one that can stand with all things. That's why it's known to be stubborn, simply because it has a lot of patience. So, you know, the other component, of course, to this is, well, what are we talking about when we're talking about the new moon in Taurus? Well, what's behind that energy, you know? And to me, it talks a lot about a lot of nurturing kind of qualities and principles can come into this, because Taurus is about how we sort of sustain ourselves, you know, it's that self-sustainment, it's the physical body, and it's our values, you know, what are we valuing within our own self, you know, what is it about our values at this point in time that we can, you know, really apply a new perspective to or begin something new with. Because don't forget, we're getting the support of Lilith, Mars, and Pluto, which are real powerhouse energies, you know, real powerhouse planetary energies, although, you know, Lilith is not a planet. Nevertheless, like I mentioned before, Pluto, Mars, and Lilith all have to do with power, and it could be the abuse of power as well. But because we've got this trine, I think we're not really looking at the level of abuse necessarily. It might just very well be that this energy really supports and enables and sustains a person to empower themselves with a sense of feeling comfortable with it, feeling at ease with it. There's no tension or friction with that. So it's kind of like exerting your sense of self-empowerment, Pluto. Mars, exerting your drive and willpower. Willpower is also Pluto. And Lilith is the energy that really resonates within us, that has to do with, you know, standing up for ourselves and being true to ourselves and fighting for what we believe in as well. So the fact that it's a trine aspect, there's no fighting to be done, as it were. It's more that those energies are actually supporting that new moon. So when you're wanting to create these new planetary sort of pathways for yourself with a new moon in Taurus, which is, what am I planting? What am I putting into the earth? What am I putting into the ground? You know, to observe being cultivated and evolve, you know, over the next month or so. And the way I can do that through Mars, Lilith, and Pluto is with a sense of great power, a sense of great self-empowerment, without causing any tension and conflict and fights fighting, because Mars is the planet of war. It's the planet that gives us that strong willpower of fighting for what we believe in as well, standing up for ourselves, being assertive, being strong in our stance, whatever that is that we're stepping into. So essentially, we've got three very powerful points: Mars, Pluto, and Lilith, all supporting this very beautiful grounding Earth energy of the new moon in Taurus, which, as I said, has very much to do with nurturing ourselves, looking after ourselves, perhaps connecting more to the earth, doing more earthy type of rituals. Obviously, we can bring in the world of money and material into this as well, because Taurus is the second house, so it does have to do with our money as well. But ultimately, on a higher level, it's our spiritual values actually also relate to Taurus too. So there's a combination of ways you can look at this, and it just depends, on where you are at the moment and what's important for you at the moment, and how you can utilize that energy to support what you're trying to proceed through or begin or nurture at this point in your life. The new moon will also be opposite Jupiter, and that's not a difficult thing because Jupiter is not a difficult planet. So even though oppositions can initially start off in a bit of a difficult way, because they polarize energies, this polarization I don't think is going to be difficult, because it's Jupiter and Scorpio, which isn't too bad at all. Jupiter and Scorpio is quite good actually. Now, we've also had just 2 days ago, Mercury finally moved out of Aries and is now into the sign of Taurus. So, there's a lot of Earth energy coming in. We've already got Mars, Pluto, Lilith in Earth signs in Capricorn. We've also got Saturn in Capricorn. There's a lot of Earth energy at the moment. So, Earth is always about stability and structure. And, the world that we create around us, within us and around us, that gives us that sense of structure, security, feeling grounded and connected on those levels, feeling anchored, to the earth, as it were, feeling anchored to the what I would prefer to call the healthy structures of life, not ones that, might leave one feeling limited or suffocating or restricted, because the earth energy can do that as well when we're talking about Saturn particularly. But Mars is in its exalted sign, in the sign of Capricorn. It has been for some time. It will be moving into Aquarius very soon. I'll talk about that in a minute. So we have a lot of Earth energy, Saturn, Mars, Pluto, Lilith. We have new moon in Taurus at 24 degrees. We've got Mercury just went into Taurus, so there's a lot of Earth energy. And we have some, with the changeovers, with Mars going into Aquarius, and Uranus moving into Taurus, which we've kind of been anticipating now for some time. Uranus moves into Taurus just in a few hours' time, actually. And when it's at 0 degrees of Taurus, not long after, I'll tell you exactly when. So Uranus moves into Taurus 2 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and Mars moves into Aquarius 4 a.m. 16th of May, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So it's literally just hours apart. We have this new moon going to Taurus. We have Uranus going to Taurus, 0 degrees. And then we have Mars going to 0 degrees of Aquarius. So in astrology, there are certain degrees that are considered to be critical. there's a few, and there's different reasons as to why. I'm not going to unpack that today, but it's it can be said that 0 degrees of any sign really is a critical point. So here we have this new moon in Taurus, and trailing behind it is Uranus going into 0 degrees of Taurus, and then Mars going into 0 degrees of Aquarius. So the two planets will be in critical degrees and squaring each other, okay? Because Taurus squares Aquarius. So when Uranus goes into Taurus and when Mars goes into Aquarius, they form a square relationship to each other, which is a very intense, dynamic, powerful, friction-provoking, dynamic-provoking energy. Okay, but the thing to note about this as well is that there's a reception. Okay, now some of you might not know what that means, some of you might, but basically there's a term called reception in astrology, which literally means that when two planets are aspecting each other in a relationship to each other, they could both be in each other's signs, or one could be in the other one's sign, which is a reception. Reception meaning they are receiving from one another, okay? And because Mars goes into Aquarius, Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius. So there is a reception, exchange of energy happening there, which I think might take away a little bit of the edge, because Uranus rules Aquarius. So it's happy, you know, it's happy to have that connection to Mars in Aquarius. There's a reception, you know, receptive, receiving, you know, it's that kind of word, that kind of feel, that kind of energy that's taking place between Uranus and Mars. So whilst I think it will potentially create some tensions and some some actions, you know, that might be seen collectively that rattle and shake things up, because Uranus can't not do that. That's just its nature. Okay, and you know, Mars is a very dynamic, forceful, powerful energy that wants to do its own thing. It wants to do it its own way. So here we have Uranus and Mars talking to each other, but they're having a bit of a conflict, you know, because they're in a square aspect. So Mars has a different sort of desire of what it wants to do, and Uranus is operating from a different level as well. But as I said, the reception might aid that a bit. It might diffuse some of that tension-provoking energy that's naturally inherent with a square aspect. But yeah, look, I would expect some pretty weird, radical things to kind of take place on a collective level. But you know, in terms of personally, again, you know, where is 0 degrees of Taurus in your chart, and where is 0 degrees of Aquarius in your chart? Because those planets will be transiting, that is Uranus and Mars, at 0 degrees of Taurus and 0 degrees of Aquarius will be transiting wherever Aquarius and Taurus are in the chart, and that square will land in, you know, wherever those signs are in the chart. So it's worth having a look at that. That's a very broad kind of general overview. It's more of a collective way of looking at it, because we're looking at the Mars-Uranus square aspect, which is happening, you know, universally, collectively. Okay, so it has to impact the collective, the entire world in different ways. And you know, Aquarius is a fixed sign, Taurus is a fixed sign. We have new moon in a fixed sign of Taurus. We have Mars going into Aquarius, fixed sign. Uranus going into Taurus, another fixed sign. So that there's a very stabilizing, fixed nature and energy about this new moon, and about Mars moving into Aquarius and Uranus moving into Taurus. So there's a fixed nature about all of this, which, you know, can imply that, well, patience is a virtue. And patience, I think, is something that's really going to be needed during this time, because the nature of fixed signs requires patience. We can't push through these energies in a quick way. Okay, that would be Aries wanting to do that, and Mars. But we're talking about Mars being in a fixed sign, so there's going to be some patience that's going to be asked, you know, of all of us, really. And certainly, you know, while Uranus enters Taurus, you know, for so many years ahead down the track. And I've touched on Uranus in Taurus in a previous video, so don't really feel the need to unpack that again. If you want to hear more about Uranus in Taurus, then please check out my other video that's, I think, titled Uranus ingress into Taurus. The thing that I wanted to further unpack today is the lovely Chiron that's gone into the sign of Aries. It's look, it's a really significant transition that we've just made. Now, Chiron moved into Aries on the 18th of April, as I think I mentioned before. And Chiron has this very unusual elliptical orbit around the sun, which basically causes it to spend longer periods in certain signs, such as Pisces and Aries. So we've just finished a whole cycle of Chiron in Pisces, which had, you know, so much to do with people really getting into their spiritual life, in the sense where wanting to examine and explore that and find out, you know, for themselves what it is they actually really connect to and believe in, and what it is, if anything at all, that's perhaps created a sense of rejection. Now, the word, and I've said this in one of my Chiron videos as well, you know, that the most common word or phrase that we hear for Chiron is the wounded healer. And there is no question that he was a wounded healer, because when we look at his myth, we can see that. But what I want to point out, which I have before, but I'm just going to expand on a couple of other points, which I think are important to understand and to absorb and to take in and to consider for your own self and your own birth chart when you're looking at Chiron. Now, Chiron was born as a basically half man, half horse, which made him equivalent to a centaur, okay? But he wasn't like all the other centaurs. We know that, because the reputation that all the other centaurs had was that they were radical, unpredictable, you know, they just did a lot of crazy stuff. They weren't really about helping people and healing and teaching and all of that, which is what Chiron was about. Now, Chiron's father is Kronos, which is the planet Saturn, and his mother is Philyra. She was a sea nymph. And what happened was Kronos and Philyra shapeshifted themselves into centaurs. And as a result, Chiron was born through that union. And when he was born, Philyra was just completely shocked that she had given birth to what she thought looked like a monster, because it was a half horse, half man. So what happened from that experience to Chiron is that she rejected him. She rejected him as her own child. And this is why the word rejection is extremely important when you're looking at Chiron in your birth chart. Just when you're looking at it natally, what house is it in, what sign is it in, what aspects does it have, the usual drill, okay? Wherever Chiron is located in your chart, there will be experiences of rejection in probably multiple different ways. It's not always obvious in identifying, because the experience of Chiron has so many layers, like all the planets do anyway, but Chiron specifically, you know, has a very deep psychic component to it in our chart that sometimes is not always recognized or identified on that surface level. So we have to kind of dig a bit deep when we're looking at Chiron. And there's still that so much that is unknown about Chiron. So much is unknown. But just going on with regards to the myth and this experience of rejection that Chiron had from his own parents, that psychologically, what that has set up for the human race is the fact that human beings really struggle to accept what is. Okay, so, and that, you know, connects to the Buddhist teachings as well, where, you know, there's a lot of understanding around the needing to accept the way things are. And by our very nature, because of the function of the ego, not that the ego is all wrong, by the way, because the ego has a very specific and distinctive purpose and function and importance, or it wouldn't exist. It's just that when it's out of balance and out of sync and totally operating from its fearful, dark shadow side, it comes across as extremely dysfunctional. We know that. We can see that in the world at large, just with all the events that take place. So Chiron was rejected by his parents. Psychologically, that speaks something about our own inability to accept life as it is, which then brings about our suffering. Now, when Chiron was rejected by his parents, namely his mother, what happened was a shepherd figure person came along and took Chiron and took him to the sun god Apollo. Apollo was a healer, a musician, an artist, a teacher. He dealt with prophecies. You know, he was an exceptionally talented god. And Chiron was taken to Apollo. So Apollo took Chiron under his wing, as it were, and started to teach him and take care of him and so forth. Now, Apollo is a sun god, and here is another clue of what's tied up in this myth of Chiron in terms of our own sense of how it is we need to heal and feel accepted as opposed to rejected. Because Apollo was a sun god symbolizing light, consciousness, awareness, we can say that the symbolism to Chiron being taken to Apollo symbolizes that psychological, spiritual component within us, where we need to bring our deep wounds and suffering to the light, so that we can create awareness around it. But we need to be very compassionate about our own wounds and suffering as well. Not only our own, but the wounds of others, or the sense of rejection that other people feel. We need to be empathetic and compassionate. Now, you know, Chiron was not able to die, and he was not able to heal himself, even though he was the master of the healing art. He could not heal himself. So this coming to the light, which is coming to Apollo, is that component about Chiron that speaks to us through letting us know that in order for us to heal and accept our deepest wounds and try and heal them, we need to bring them into the light, into our conscious awareness. Okay, so that's the symbolism around Apollo's part of the myth with regards to Chiron. And the final component, which, I mean, you know, I could spend hours talking about this, but these are three very main distinct points that I would like you to consider when you're looking at Chiron in the chart. And because Chiron has gone into Aries, so we've just begun a completely brand new cycle in consciousness, in the birth. Aries is the birth, it's the beginning. And it is very much to do with our ego, yes. But it's not about, you know, criticizing the ego and putting it down and all that sort of stuff. It's about healing the ego and bringing it into wholeness, light, awareness, and consciousness through Chiron being in Aries. So the other thing that I wanted to say was that Chiron's, the way Chiron was essentially healed was that he swapped places with Prometheus. Prometheus is the Greek name for the planet Uranus. Now, Uranus, or Prometheus, was chained to a rock where his liver was eaten daily by vultures, and then at night it would recover, and then the next day the vultures would come back and peck at his liver again. So he was basically bound to this eternal suffering that was just not going to end. Chiron was also subjected to this eternal suffering because of his wounding that he could not heal because of the poison arrow that Hercules accidentally injected him with. So the only way that Chiron was going to be free, because he couldn't die, was to make this exchange with Uranus or Prometheus. So the symbolism in that is that there was a sense of compassion and empathy in that exchange that took place, because both gods, if you like, were subsequently freed as a result of that coming together and exchanging something, sharing something, and giving something to each other. So there's that message there of, you know, we need to be empathetic and compassionate towards all humans. You know, first of all with ourselves, because if we can't do it for ourselves, then, you know, we're really going to struggle to give that to others. So there's quite a few kind of hidden type messages, you know. The myths are very, very powerful. The myths are very revealing to help you understand basically what each planet really means and how it really functions in the chart. So if you're a beginner in astrology, or if you are not a beginner and you haven't really explored mythology very much, then, you know, I really encourage you to explore it, okay? Because the mythology is a fundamental, core, central underpinning of astrology, you know, and all the gods and goddesses, the planets, and how and why they operate in the way that they do. It's really important stuff. So yeah, look, Chiron into Aries, massive long cycle. It's going to be there until 2027. Really enabling, I think, the collective in humanity to basically clean up. How else can I say it? Find a deeper acceptance of ourselves, because you know, just being born into this human existence has a deep wounding component to it. Just the sheer fact that we're born into this body and into this 3D reality, because of how difficult and hard it can be at times. So the safety and warmth and security that we felt in our mother's womb, you know, gets shattered the minute that we're born. And then, you know, we could even say before that, when we were in the other realms, the other realm, the other side, whatever you want to call it. Yes, we're dealing with different things on the other side, and you know, none of us can really say 100%, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, exactly what that looks like. A lot of us have a sense, have a connection, have a feel, have a some kind of inner and understanding. But there's a very large component to life that's obviously a mystery. Okay, so you know, through the work of astrology and other works, what are we doing? We're really trying to understand who we are, what we are doing here, and what does this all mean? What does this game actually mean? You know, let's face it, that's what we're trying to work out in one way or another. And we have different, you know, experiences of that, and we have different periods of growth and so on and so forth. But Chiron in Aries must be saying something about humanity at the moment. There's a crisis in ego consciousness. You know, this is a real opportunity for people to basically have more love and acceptance towards themselves. See what my t-shirt says? So that's what I'm talking about. You know, we have to believe and feel that about ourselves so that we can have a healthier acceptance of who we are, why we are here, our ego, and so forth. So there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just, you know, the kind of like the tip of the iceberg, if you like. And hopefully a useful pointer for you to consider when you're looking at and contemplating what does Chiron in Aries mean at the moment for me. You always need to go back to your birth chart. Where is Aries in your birth chart? That's where Chiron will be. And a really useful thing to do, and it's useful to do this with every single planet, but especially with Chiron, and especially with the outer planets, because the outer planets, meaning transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and Chiron, I would say, they are the more mystical, complex planetary energies that are a lot more difficult to get a real handle on. So the best way to understand what they really mean is to observe them, you know, over the years as they're transiting in your chart, you know, and keep a diary. Keep a diary where you make note of significant shifts, changes, and dates in your life, you know, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in career, or whether it's in your own personal spiritual journey, you know, moments that you have that are awakening moments, sudden flashes of insight, which is all Uranus. There's a lot, but the best thing to do is to really be recording these things, because then you can go back and you can trace where the planets have been transiting and what aspects they've been making in your chart, and you can start to really get a sense of what it all means, basically. And if you, whether you want to be a professional practicing astrologer or not, it's still a very useful thing to do. There's so much you can learn from that, and always looking at other people's charts as well, you know, and watching, you know, transiting planets in other people's charts and making things like that. That's the way you learn astrology. You know, it's we don't learn astrology just by picking up a book and reading it and knowing what Mars in Capricorn means, knowing a few key words for that, or knowing what the Sun in Leo means. You know, they're your basics. Obviously, you need to have that, but you know, in order to really flesh things out and develop and cultivate, you've got to always connect it to life and real life experiences, your own and other people's. And I've said that before. I'll probably say it again. Just very quickly, I will, probably not necessary to do this now, but okay, let's do it anyway. All right, So here is the chart for the new moon. Let me just correct that, because right there. So I'm just using a function on Solifier which enables me to move the planets forward or take them back, whether it's seconds, minutes, hours, weeks, or months. It's a very useful tool on Solifier. Okie dokie. So there we have it. There's the new moon. Don't worry about where everything is located, because I'm doing a chart for Melbourne, Australia right now. You could be in the UK, you could be in the US, you could be in China. I don't know. So it's not important to know where all these planets are located in this chart, because chart will look different based on the location that you're in. But it's interesting to see here that there is the new moon in Taurus, down here where I'm flashing my cursor, rolling it around. And here is the trine to Black Moon, Lilith, Pluto, and Mars that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this talk. So there's a beautiful trine. It's, as I said, this is a really positive flow of energy, because these are really difficult planets. They're not easy energies, and they can bring up some pretty intense experiences and pretty intense challenges that are not, you know, they're not easy. How else can I put it? They're just not easy. So I'm very pleased to see that the new moon is trining those three, because there's a message being carried there by these energies here into the new moon, suggesting that, you know, we can really connect to a stronger sense of our own power in a way that's not going to create conflict and drama and problems and issues. There's a sense of the cosmos, the universe, really supporting us at this particular time with the foundations and ground that we want to sort of create with our own sense of values, self-worth, could be money issues, but self-sustenance, you know, taking care of ourselves. And as we proceed forward, I will show you, I will just, if you look down here, you can see Uranus is at 2959 of Aries. It's literally at the very last possible point it can be in Aries. Now, if you just watch what happens as I click over hour by hour, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 hours later, Uranus has moved into Taurus. Now, if I go further again, so now it will be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I want you to be looking at Mars up here, by the way, in Capricorn. It's 10 hours I've moved forward, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 hours. So almost, yeah, the hours short of 24 hours, right? So almost a day later, we have Mars then going into the sign of Aquarius. And as you can see, Mars 0 degrees of Aquarius, Uranus 0 degrees of Aquarius. They have an exact square, as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. And what I was talking about with regards to reception is that in this square aspect that they have, Uranus is receiving Mars quite well, because Mars is, you know, in the sign of Aquarius, and Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius. So that's always, it's just an interesting thing to pay attention to, because it can change or adjust the intensity of things at times as well, and so forth. And there's Chiron in Aries, which is going to be moving very, very slow. And Chiron is going to go back into Pisces, by the way, somewhere around towards the end of the year or beginning of next year. And then it'll eventually go back into Aries not long after. So it's kind of, it's an interesting interesting thing it's doing, which certainly relates to its very unusual orbit because of how it spends, as I said, how it spends a long time in Pisces and Aries. So it's giving us a very small little taste of Chiron in Aries. You know, it's kind of just, you know, it's kind of like it's dipped its one little finger into Aries, and it's kind of getting a sense, just a tiny little sense, and then it goes, okay, well, I'm just going to go back into Pisces, and I'm just going to do one final closure there. So there'll be something that's going to probably resonate with most of us, certainly collectively and perhaps individually for a lot of us. Something that hasn't quite finished yet with Chiron in Pisces, because if it had, it wouldn't be going back there. So make a note of that and just watch, you know, what's happening in your chart. Where is 29 degrees of Pisces in your chart? I know where it is for me, and I know exactly what it's got to do with. So it's very, very powerful for me because of what it's connected to in my life, which is the biggest event in my life thus far. Okay, so I think I'll leave it there for now. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. Not certain how long this recording has been going on. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there, guys. So yeah, happy new moon, and you know, may you plant some beautiful, beautiful seeds of the beautiful earthy stuff that you kind of need in your life right now, and get in touch with that Pluto, Mars, Lilith that's really supporting this new moon at the moment, and have a consider about Chiron in Aries and the three major points I made relating to the myth, and you know, about rejection and about empathy and compassion and about bringing our wounds into the light, all that sort of stuff, and have a think about the fact that Chiron's going to go back into Pisces and completely finish and close something off before it really gets started into healing the Aries component and energy within all of us and collectively. Is there anything else I needed to say? No, there isn't. Thanks for watching. Namaste. See you all soon. Bye.